Usually when you picture a vacation in Paris,
Hmm.
you picture sleeping in,
Oh, absolutely.
like wandering down to a corner cafe at maybe 10 in the morning and just tearing into a fresh, warm, buttery croissant while you people watch.
Yeah, very relaxed, very glamorous, kind of slow-paced vision of a holiday.
Exactly. What you generally do not picture is an alarm clock violently buzzing at 5:30 in the morning so you can, like, stumble onto the metro in the dark just to meet a tour bus by 7 a.m.
Yeah, that sounds rough.
Right. Honestly, voluntarily waking up that early while you're on vacation sounds a little bit like a punishment.
Yeah.
But today, welcome to the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass. Our mission today is a deep dive into our source material regarding a massive 13-hour Loire Valley Castles day trip from Paris. And, we're going to figure out if this grueling marathon is actually worth the effort.
And I'm here to prove to you that this supposedly exhausting day is, in fact, a magical, stress-free shortcut to feeling like French royalty.
A big promise.
I know, I know. But think of me as your seasoned travel veteran for today. I mean, I know this specific experience inside and out from our sources, and the goal today is to anticipate literally all your doubts, break down the logistics, and share every single detail so vividly that you will feel like you are already on the trip with us.
Okay, I love that. Let's unpack this, because before we can feel like royalty, you actually had to get on the bus.
Right, the hardest part.
Yeah. And if you're looking at this trip, you essentially face a fork in the road right off the bat. There are two distinct versions of this experience in our source material that cater to slightly different, travel styles and budgets.
Yeah, so the first is a highly accessible option. It runs around $127 per adult, and it accommodates up to 50 people on a standard coach.
Okay, pretty standard tour size.
Exactly. The itinerary features the two major heavyweight castles, Chambord and Chenonceau, plus a midday stop in the town of Blois.
Gotcha. And then you have the premium alternative, which is priced at roughly 235 euros. So it's a smaller group experience.
Which some people really prefer.
Definitely. It hits the exact same two major castles, but it swaps out the town of Blois for a stop in the village of Amboise instead. But honestly, no matter which path you choose, your day has this, highly cinematic start.
It really does. You meet your guide right at the catacombs of Paris.
Which is such an evocative, slightly spooky place to start a history tour,
Absolutely. But navigating the Paris metro at dawn can be incredibly disorienting.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Right. So the insider strategy here from the deep dive is taking sortie 1, that's exit 1, at the Denfert-Rochereau station.
Okay, taking notes on that.
Yeah, it literally spits you out at 1 Avenue du Colonel Henri Roltanguy, which is directly across the street from the catacombs.
So zero stress.
Exactly. Zero getting lost before the sun is even up. You just walk out and boom, there's your guide holding a sign ready to whisk you away.
It's a brilliant staging area. But here is where we need to address a massive logistical hurdle that I think a lot of families completely overlook when they book these European coach tours.
Oh, the car seat issue.
Yes. The standard larger tour officially welcomes ages 0 to 99, which, sounds incredibly family-friendly on paper.
It sure does.
However, the coaches do not have ISOFIX anchor points, and they have very limited availability for 3-point seatbelts.
And for anyone who isn't up to speed on bus mechanics, why is that such a big deal?
Well, as a parent, I have to jump in and explain why that is basically a deal breaker. If you haven't dealt with car seats in Europe recently, you might assume, any seatbelt will do.
Yeah.
But a standard lap belt just goes horizontally across the waist.
Which is fine for us adults.
Right. But a toddler's center of gravity is completely different. Their heads are disproportionately heavy. So in a sudden stop, a lap belt just cannot restrain their upper body safely.
That sounds really dangerous, honestly.
It is. A 3-point harness secures the shoulders, and an ISOFIX system literally locks a car seat directly into the heavy metal chassis of the vehicle itself.
Right, so if the bus only has lap belts, their safety just cannot be guaranteed at all. Which means you are practically required to bring your own bulky child restraint system from home.
Exactly. Which brings me to a very harsh reality check for our listeners. Is dragging a massive, heavy car seat through the Paris metro at 6:30 in the morning just to, wrestle it onto a coach for a 13-hour day actually realistic?
You're sweating just thinking about it.
Right. Honestly, I think for most families with toddlers, you should probably just sit this one out to save your sanity.
It's a really crucial point about setting realistic expectations for your own travel endurance. And, that is exactly why the alternative itinerary takes a completely different approach.
How so?
Well, they bypass that entire logistical nightmare by setting a strict minimum age requirement of 7 years old.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I mean, a 13-hour day is a marathon anyway. It forces you to be realistic about who this trip is really designed for.
Exactly. But hey, once you survive those early morning logistics, you settle into your air-conditioned coach, the dense Paris cityscape starts to fade into rolling countryside, and the real magic begins.
The castles.
Castles.
And we have to start with Chateau de Chambord. I mean, just picturing this place based on the descriptions and the source material is staggering.
It's huge.
It is the absolute biggest castle in the Loire Valley. It has this massive footprint, sprawling columns, and grand, incredibly complex Renaissance rooflines. Like, it doesn't even look like a normal roof.
What does it look like?
It looks like an entire fortified medieval city of towers, cupolas, and chimneys just stacked on top of each other.
That is wild. And what's fascinating here is actually why Chambord looks like that.
Okay, lay it on me.
So it was never intended to be a comfortable, functional family home. King Francois I built it in the early 16th century primarily as a hunting lodge.
A hunting lodge. That is the most aggressive hunting lodge I've ever heard of.
Right, but more than that, it was basically a geopolitical weapon.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was a statement of absolute power and wealth designed to intimidate visiting monarchs and ambassadors. The sheer overwhelming scale of it is literally meant to make you feel physically small in the presence of the French crown.
Wow. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. The legendary double spiral staircase inside Chambord.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
When you first hear the phrase spiral staircase, you just think of a standard winding block of steps, right?
Mm.
But this is an absolute engineering marvel.
It really is.
It's often described in the sources as an M.C. Escher optical illusion, but I think the best way to visualize how it actually works is to picture a strand of DNA.
That is the perfect analogy, yeah.
Because you have two separate staircases that twist around the exact same central hollow column. They coil around each other, intertwining, but they never actually intersect.
Right, which served a very specific social purpose back in the day.
Okay, I love this kind of historical gossip. Why did they do that?
Well, you could have a super important ambassador walking all the way up one flight and a servant carrying, a heavy tray of food walking all the way down the other.
Okay.
And while they might occasionally glimpse each other through the interior windows of that hollow core, they would never actually cross paths.
That is wild.
It allowed for the seamless, completely invisible movement of staff while maintaining the pristine isolation of the royals.
It is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's actually widely believed to have been inspired by Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. So if we look at the narrative of this day trip, Chambord is a masterclass in raw, dominant power.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you get back on the bus and you move to Chateau de Chenonceau, which offers a completely different architectural philosophy.
Yeah, if Chambord is all about intimidation, Chenonceau is all about elegance and defying nature.
Defying nature.
Oh, yeah, it is an absolute marvel because of its location. It isn't just built near the water. It is quite literally built directly across the rushing waters of the Cher River.
Which is mind-blowing to me. Like, how do you actually build a massive stone castle directly over a flowing river in the 1500s? You can't just, pour modern concrete into the water.
No, you definitely can't. You have to engineer a massive stone bridge first, with arches strong enough to let the current pass through without eroding the foundation.
Okay.
And then you build a delicate royal palace right on top of that bridge. The castle spans the water entirely, and it is flanked by these meticulously manicured Renaissance gardens right on the riverbanks. It feels so delicate, like it's almost just floating on the current.
It sounds gorgeous.
Yeah.
But, the architecture is really only half the experience, right?
It's true.
Because a huge concern I would have on a multi-castle day trip is the dreaded museum fatigue.
Oh, yeah, the glaze-over effect.
Exactly. I hate the feeling of being aggressively herded by some flag-waving guide through opulent rooms. Like, here's a tapestry, here's a bed, keep moving until everything just blurs together into one big velvet curtain.
It is a very common trap on these megatours, for sure. But traveler feedback in our sources consistently points out a much better pace here.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yeah, one reviewer, GSW, specifically noted that you aren't being herded at all.
Okay.
You get a highly engaging audio tour that provides rich historical details about the royal furnishings and artwork, but you're given plenty of time for self-guided exploration.
So you can actually stand there, look at the intricate woodwork of a bedroom, and just soak in the history on your own time without someone stepping on your heels.
Precisely. You get the deep historical context, but with the freedom to move at your own pace.
Okay, so after the sensory overload of these massive castles and absorbing hundreds of years of royal history, both of our tour paths offer what I'd call a palate cleanser.
Some downtime.
Right, some free time in a historic French village to grab lunch and just decompress. But the village you get depends entirely on the ticket you bought.
Yes, that's a key distinction. The standard tour stops in the town of Blois. It's a charming, quintessential French spot, great for lunch, and it features its own towering royal chateau that you can admire.
Sounds lovely.
It is. However, there is a vital piece of logistical reality to consider here. If you book this specific route on a Monday, be prepared for a very sleepy experience.
The Monday trap.
Exactly. One particularly observant traveler, their handle was vacation followed by a string of numbers. Vacation 0735296714 pointed out that in rural France, many local restaurants, bakeries, and shops are completely closed on Mondays as a day of rest.
I mean, good for them, but bad for tourists.
Exactly. You can still find a place to eat if you follow the guide's recommendations, but the town itself will be incredibly quiet.
That is such a good insider tip to know before you book. Now, if you take the alternative itinerary, your afternoon village stop is Amboise instead.
Right.
And Amboise seems to boast some incredibly heavy-hitting historical connections. It's deeply tied to King Francois I, and it's actually where Leonardo da Vinci spent his final years.
It is. The Chateau d'Amboise towers over the town, and Da Vinci's residence is right there. The whole village is just steeped in this rich, intellectual Renaissance history.
So if I'm a listener standing at a crossroads trying to choose my itinerary, how do I decide? Am I picking the quiet, charming streets of Blois for a simple lunch, or am I walking in the footsteps of Da Vinci in Amboise?
Well, it really comes down to the rhythm you want for your downtime.
Okay, make your case.
Do you want your lunch break to just be a quiet, atmospheric rest stop to recover from the sheer scale of Chambord? If so, Blois is perfect. But if you are a history buff who wants every single second of your day packed with significant sightseeing and historical weight, Amboise offers a really intense continuation of the Renaissance narrative.
That makes a lot of sense. But no matter which village you choose, it wouldn't be a proper deep dive into a French day trip without discussing the local vintage.
Absolutely not. You got to have the wine.
Right. Both tours actually include a complimentary local wine tasting. But the setting is what elevates this from a standard tourist stop into something just unforgettable.
Oh, the setting is incredible.
The tasting doesn't happen in some generic, brightly lit room. It takes place right inside the atmospheric vaulted wine cellars of Chateau de Chenonceau itself.
Which just sounds incredibly cool.
It does.
But there's actual engineering at work in those cellars, isn't there?
Yes, there is. The same architectural genius that built the castles also designed these cellars. The vaulted stone ceilings and the thick walls naturally regulate the temperature and the humidity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it acts essentially as a 16th century refrigerator, creating the absolute perfect microclimate for storing and aging wine, long before modern climate control even existed.
So you're drinking wine inside an architectural marvel.
Exactly.
And the premium itinerary specifically guarantees a tasting of 3 distinct regional wines down in those cellars.
Nice.
But, this raises a major objection that we see pop up constantly in the reviews. Well, people ask, what if I don't drink? Or what if I'm traveling with my kids? Am I going to feel incredibly awkward and out of place standing in a medieval wine cellar while everyone else is doing a dedicated tasting?
Oh, that's a very valid concern. When you hear wine tasting in France, it can sound super intimidating or exclusive.
Highly pretentious.
Yeah, but traveler accounts completely dispel that worry. A reviewer named Megan H. noted that the vibe is incredibly relaxed.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the bottles are just passed around casually. Plenty of people choose not to partake in the wine and still have a wonderful time just soaking in the atmosphere of the historic cellars.
And the kids aren't left out either. There was a brilliant review from a 12-year-old traveler who gave the entire tour 5 stars.
Wait, a 12-year-old on a 13-hour history tour?
Yep. Earning the respect of a 12-year-old on a 13-hour history marathon is practically a miracle.
High praise indeed. What actually won them over?
They specifically raved about the juice.
The juice.
Yeah, they serve delicious apple and grape juice during the tasting, and this kid noted that they've had juice before, obviously, but never anything as good as what they poured in the Loire Valley.
I love that. That's the beauty of it. The operators know exactly how to make the experience inclusive, whether you are a wine connoisseur or just a thirsty preteen.
Totally. But on the flip side of that, if you do enjoy wine, you have to be strategic.
Oh, yeah.
Another reviewer, Awk Brittany, offered a very funny but necessary warning.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, between the 3 different tastings in the cellar, maybe pairing a glass of wine with your lunch in the village and perhaps finishing with a sweet dessert wine later,
Oh, boy.
you will definitely be feeling it by the end of the afternoon.
A word to the wise. The Rhine is plentiful, if you want it to be, but pacing is absolutely everything on a day trip this
For
way.
sure.
All right, so we've talked about the majestic castles, the charming villages, the vaulted cellars, and the incredible wine. It all sounds like a dream.
It really does.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What happens when the wine has worn off, your feet are throbbing, and the weather suddenly turns bad?
The fun part.
Right. We promise the unvarnished reality of the experience, and we have to deliver. What is the physical toll of this trip?
Well, the physical reality is something you absolutely must prepare for. A 13-hour day is a grind.
It's a long time to be out and about.
It is. You have to remember that a significant portion of that time is spent on a coach. Travelers, like reviewer Zali C, consistently point out that the seats can really lack legroom, especially if you're tall.
Oh, that is tough when you're trapped for a couple of hours on the highway.
It is, and they mention the air conditioning might sometimes struggle to keep up on a blisteringly hot summer day.
Not ideal.
No. Furthermore, the walking is extensive. The parking lots for these massive royal estates are basically out of necessity, located quite far from the castles themselves.
Makes sense. You can't just pave over a Renaissance garden.
Exactly. The walk from the bus, down the long gravel avenues, and then up and down the sprawling staircases of the chateau takes a real physical toll. Wearing your absolute most comfortable walking shoes is not a suggestion, it is a mandate.
Okay, so it's not all just lounging on velvet cushions. You have to put the physical work in.
Definitely.
But it seems like there's a secret weapon that makes all those miles and the tight bus seats melt away.
The tour guides.
Yes.
They are the absolute linchpin of this entire operation.
The feedback for the guides in our source material is overwhelmingly positive. They sound like absolute rock stars. You have guides like Daniel, who reportedly carries the whole group with this incredible, tireless energy and humor.
And you have Jasmina, who manages to make history feel like a deeply engaging story rather than some dry academic lesson.
There's also John, who spins tales of the French royal family that feel like listening to actual fairy tales.
And James, whose infectious passion for the region just elevates the entire day for the whole bus.
But okay, let me throw a curveball at you. Let's say you've got a great guide, right?
Sure.
Can a good guide actually save a tour if the weather is an absolute disaster?
That's the real test.
Because bad weather is every traveler's worst nightmare on a day trip. If it is pouring freezing rain while you're trying to look at a Renaissance garden, isn't the day just fundamentally ruined?
You would naturally think so, but the reality proves otherwise.
Really?
Yeah, there was a fantastic account from a traveler named Andy S., who booked this tour on what turned out to be a miserably rainy day in the Loire Valley.
Oh, poor guy.
But because of their fantastic guide, Sebastian, the trip was still spectacular.
How does a guide fix the rain? Do they have a weather machine?
No. They fix it by contextualizing the environment so well that the weather becomes secondary.
Oh, that's clever.
A great guide pulls your focus away from the gray skies and into the brilliant engineering of the indoor spaces. They bring the history to life inside the dry, warm castles, so you aren't just relying on sunny outdoor views to have a good time.
That is a true professional right there.
And as a reward for sticking it out, that specific group ended the day following a magical double rainbow from the Loire Valley all the way back to Paris.
A double rainbow all the way to Paris. Come on, you literally cannot script that.
You really can't. It just goes to show that with the right guide, even the worst conditions become part of the adventure.
I love that. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's bring it all together.
Let's do it.
Yes, this 13-hour excursion requires some serious stamina.
Yeah.
You're going to need those comfortable walking shoes. You might need a little bit of patience with the legroom on the bus, and you have to be ready for an early morning.
Very early.
But in exchange for that effort, what you're getting is an incredibly well-oiled machine.
Exactly. It serves up unparalleled Renaissance architecture, brilliant engineering, great local wine, and incredibly rich history.
And all of that without the immense stress of trying to navigate French country roads, figure out parking, or, coordinate ticketing yourself.
You trade a bit of physical endurance for total logistical relaxation.
Exactly. You wake up early, you get on the bus, and they basically take care of the absolute rest.
And we want to thank you for joining us today on the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass. Remember, the ultimate goal of our deep dives is to make sure you know exactly what you are walking into before you hit that book button.
We want you informed, prepared, and excited to explore. And I actually want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Something that struck me when we were talking about the Amboise itinerary earlier.
Oh, about Da Vinci.
Yes, Leonardo da Vinci spent the final years of his life living right there in Amboise. Just think about that for a second.
It's pretty incredible to imagine.
When one of the greatest inventive engineering minds in human history looked out his window at the sprawling, majestic stone castles of the Loire Valley and the rushing waters of the Cher River, did he just see a beautiful royal home?
Probably not.
Right. Or, in the quiet of his brilliant mind, was he secretly redesigning the rooflines, re-engineering the river dams, and imagining how he could make it all better?
A mind like that never really turns off, does it?
Not a chance. Makes that 5:30 a.m. alarm clock seem a lot more like a magical shortcut to history, doesn't it? Until next time, keep exploring.